It was unbelievably hot and dry the summer before last. The experts said we smashed records set just a year earlier. That winter,
the mountains out west didn't get any snowfall. Nothing. And the spring rains never came in the Midwest.
By June, farmers were saying the country's corn, wheat, and soybean crops would be a total loss. And barge traffic was halted as major rivers started to run dry. Food prices
skyrocketed, and the government began rationing everything. Then the riots started. Money became practically worthless. Not long after that, the Saudis and the other producers cut off all oil shipments to the U.S. And in a few days, gas stations closed, power grids went down, and the water quit running. Then the government collapsed.
And with it, any kind of law and order. The Army couldn't help. The soldiers went home to be with their families. And in a few days,
the great die-off began. Within 6 weeks, almost everybody's dead. From either starvation, murder, or suicide.
It's been months now, and I know it can't last much longer, so I'm going out and looking for survivors. And I'm making this video because, well, I really have no idea why I'm making this video. But I don't know what else to do. And it's finally killed Dad. So I guess I'm doing it for him.
He's the first person I've seen in 2 days. Is he safe? Only one way to find out.
I remember one of the things that I heard a lot of at first was a lot of people yelling at each other. I'd walk through the neighborhood that first night, and I couldn't believe all the people that were fighting. Maybe that was just how they were dealing with all the stress. They've been holding it inside. And the power went out and the dam just broke, I guess. Maybe it's because they didn't have any TV to keep them quiet. Unhappy days, every day. It was like a bad episode of Jerry Springer on steroids. Everybody was shouting at each other. Up and down the block, from the first house to the last house on the left, even on the right. Kids were crying. It got weird. But that only lasted a few days. Then it got bad. It got real bad. Yeah. Guess about 4 or 5 days in. I don't know about where you lived, but in my neighborhood, about that time, I started hearing a lot of gunshots. And I learned pretty damn quickly which ones I had to worry about, which ones were just some poor guy calling it quits. If we'd hear a lot of shots all together, me and my wife would get into the basement and we'd hide. We had an escape hatch down there in the crawl space, and we'd lay there and be real quiet. If we didn't hear anything for a couple of hours, we'd come crawling back up out of there like that little girl from the television set in the movie The Ring. And we'd go back to doing what we were usually doing, which was just another round of nothing. But if we heard one shot, followed by a second or a third, we wouldn't get too worried. Because guns aren't the quietest way to kill yourself. But who cares? But if you want to take your wife, or maybe take your kid and your wife and then yourself, you take those shots pretty quick. You don't want to take too much time to think about it. There was a lot of that in our neighborhood. I just had to get out of there. There were so many dead people in their homes. And the smell. They say you can smell a dead body from a mile away. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, the first couple of months got pretty bad. After a couple of weeks. That's what I remember. Quiet. And the smell.
Who kills themselves in a chair in front of an old house? Did it mean something to her? Hasn't been dead long from the looks of it. And the gun's still here. That's a good sign. And I can always use another gun.
So you want to know what I remember? I was living downtown, and I remember it emptied out pretty fast. It turned into a ghost town in 3 or 4 days. It's like something out of a horror movie. We had everything but the zombies. I don't know where all those people went, but they're not downtown anymore. You see, you couldn't stay in your apartment because there wasn't enough food or water and there was no place to hide. You could have hidden in the building, but if you wanted food or water, you had to go out looking for it. And there was no place to hide once you were out on the street. Out there you were an easy target for anybody with a rifle. I know. Because the first time I went out, on about the 3rd day, I guess it was, because at first the soldiers drove up and down the streets and used loudspeakers to tell everybody to stay inside. And anyway, on about the 3rd day, I had to find something to eat. And somebody took a shot at me. I don't have any idea where it came from. I wasn't doing nothing. I was just trying to make it to the other side of the street. After that, I waited till dark. I made it back to my apartment, gathered a few things in a bag, and got the hell out of downtown. I've never been back. And then I was living in one of those abandoned houses out by the airport. And I saw this other guy I knew from downtown. He lived only a couple of blocks away from me. And he said the same thing happened to him. People shooting at anything that moved. Who'd do something like that? Crazy people, I guess. And I guess we were all a little crazy by that time. You think you might have some time to spend here with me? Not that I can make you stay or anything, but it gets really lonely. I bet everybody tells you that. When I was living downtown, I was so happy to be all by myself. Now I just wish I had somebody to talk to every once in a while. I'm going crazy. And I know it's because I'm all by myself. When it gets right down to it, nobody really wants to be a loner. Not like this. And I guess that's all that's left. Just a few human beings who are forced to be loners. But it would really be nice if you could stick around a while, a couple of hours maybe. Or I could go with you. I could help you find people to talk to. And I could tell you about some more of the stuff I've seen.
Funny how many people killed themselves outside. Lots of people used guns, but more used pills. And lots of people found out that not all pills are painless and just make you go to sleep. But this guy looks lucky enough. No vomit all over his beard and shirt. Looks like he went pretty quick.
Well, we were real lucky, I guess. At least Dad said we were real lucky. And his dad, he was one of those guys who built a real bomb shelter in his backyard in, what, 1960s? Something like that. You know, in case they got into a war with the Russians. But by the time I was born, it wasn't really too much of a big deal anymore. Worried about getting nuked and such.
Yeah, the bomb shelter was kind of cool, I guess. I mean, I was the only kid I knew whose family had a bomb shelter in their backyard. We used to go in there and play when we were kids.
Yeah, I remember that. One of my friends, he had a tornado shelter back behind his house. Compared to what Grandpa had, that thing might as well have just been a hole in the ground with a sheet of metal over it. And then when he and Grandma died, Mom and Dad sold our house and we moved on over there. And Dad, he was still so paranoid. He kept that thing filled with food and water. Mom died a few years ago. So when this all started, he said we should just all go down and lock ourselves in. So that's what we did. It's probably why we're alive right now.
So, you want me to tell her about it? I mean, they were your friends.
Well, we went down the shelter late in the afternoon on the second day. It was real quiet in the neighborhood, but we had heard from a guy across the street. There were shootings going on closer to downtown. I don't know, roving gangs or something like that. So me, Caleb, Dad, we all decided to just go down there and lock ourselves in. But it wasn't more than a couple hours later. Some loud banging on the outer door, a lot of screaming. I had recognized one of those voices. It was a guy I went to high school with. I showed him the shelter. He was screaming. It was just him and his kid, and the boy was shot. Needed help. So Dad, he locked the inner door, the big one behind him, and he opened that outer door, and they grabbed him. Said they were going to kill him if we didn't let him in. We never did open that door, though. There was no way they were going to get in. They went away about after a day or so. Never did see Dad again.
We stayed in that shelter for about 6 months, I guess. We didn't really need to go anywhere else. We had all the food and water we needed, and the ventilation system was completely hidden. Every once in a while, for a few minutes at a time during the night, one of us might come up and look around, but other than that, we stayed underground.
So, I don't really know what we could tell you about our experience. Kind of like being in jail, I guess. Food and water started to run out. And we've been living out here ever since. I imagine we're probably doing the same thing everybody else is doing. I mean, we're going through houses. We find stuff to eat every now and then. And we watch each other's backs. Is that what you wanted?
This isn't the first time I've seen somebody ended in the graveyard. She probably has family buried here. In the end, this was the only thing that mattered, and she looks peaceful enough. Cute little girl.
My wife Jane was a religious woman, a good woman. She thought God could help us. So we went to the local church, and we were hoping to find some people there, some good people that would know what to do, have some ideas. But there was nobody there with any ideas. They were thinking the same thing as us. And my wife kept saying, "Oh, God will help out. God will help us." But then it got worse. And God didn't help. Then one day I lost my temper and I got mad at her, and I told her I didn't want to hear about God anymore. I didn't believe in that. Well, after that, she didn't speak to me anymore. She stayed with me for about a week, and then she left me. She just picked up and walked out. I think maybe it was a blessing that Jane left me when she did. Otherwise, we'd have been just like all the other couples, trusting in Jesus, and deciding to go out on our own together. So I think it was probably a blessing that she left. But I don't want you to get the wrong idea about that word blessing, because I don't think God had anything to do with this. I think that the better word is lucky. I was lucky that she left me when she did. You're taking a terrible chance coming here. You know that, don't you? We've got a nuclear plant about 50 miles up the river. Or I should say we had a nuke plant about 50 miles upriver. Then the crew walked out on that thing, just abandoned it. My son was in the Navy. He worked on some of that stuff. And he told me, you can't just walk away like that. You got to cool them down slowly over a period of weeks and months. If you don't, they'll explode. They'll kill everybody around, everything. They said there was an explosion up there. I didn't hear it here. But then people started coming down from up the river, and they didn't look good. They were puking and sick and everything. I'm not feeling too good myself. I've been puking when I'm trying to eat. But you should get out of here. It's not safe here.
I could smell them from back on the road. Was this murder? Or a triple suicide? And who cut them down? And why take the ropes? Ropes aren't that hard to find. And I guess bodies aren't that hard to find either.
I can say whatever I want here, right? Of course I can. Well, this is something that's bothered me for a long time. Do you know what a sociopath is? Dictionary says a sociopath is a person who has little regard for the feelings and welfare of others. My dad, a long-time old-school Democrat, used to joke and say that a sociopath was just a conservative's conservative. You know what I think? I think it was a bunch of sociopaths who got us into this mess. Politicians and rich or famous people that knew that it was coming and could have made a real difference. I mean, if you're middle class, what are you going to do? Just drive a hybrid? If you're some poor redneck, you're just ignorant. Probably a little stupid. But what about all the congressmen and the scientists and the Hollywood types? They could have made some real noise. Yeah, it might have hit them in the wallet, cost them their jobs, but look at what was at stake, the whole fucking world. So, did that make them sociopaths? Are you still rolling? I had a friend who was married to an alcoholic. You ever been close to one? Sheila was okay as long as she had a few drinks in her. She was what you'd call a high-functioning alkie. As long as there was booze around, she was fine. You get her drunk, which took quite a bit, or make her dry out, she was a completely different person. Unpredictable. Almost dangerous, really. Well, at first, when this all started, she was okay at first. I mean, they had a lot of booze around. As long as she was high, she could deal with it. Maybe better than most. The booze wasn't going to last forever. I guess my friend figured that out pretty early. So he killed her. He didn't want to take a chance of Sheila doing something dumb when she got desperate and ended up getting him killed. Does that make him a sociopath? You know that prison between here and Simonville? I used to live just up the road from it. I had a cousin who worked there. It was medium security. They had, a little more than 300 prisoners there. No real bad guys. Just a bunch of dudes who got busted for drugs and burglaries, minor stuff, I guess. Anyhow, when this all got bad, they gas shortages and having problems finding food on the shelves. The Department of Corrections was trying to find, figure out what to do if it all got real bad. My cousin said that the warden and his people were in conference calls every day just freaking out about what to do. When the power shut off, and of course the prison was locked down by then, most of the guards just took off. My cousin and a couple of the other guards stayed around for a couple hours. They were talking about, maybe unlocking all the cell doors. I mean, these dudes weren't dangerous. Well, they weren't any more dangerous than anyone else at that point. In the end, my cousin and his buddies just took off too. They figured they didn't need the competition. Were they sociopaths?
Friends of mine. And where's their car? It had a busted axle and hadn't moved out of that driveway in months. Oh. He probably got the idea from a friend. Load the kids in the car late at night and tell them they're going on a trip. He and his wife didn't have any pills. But they had this old car and a vacuum cleaner hose. And they had a little gas. Movement behind one of those windows? Maybe. I always want to make sure they see the camera. Everybody wants to tell a story.
We worked at Mercy Hospital downtown. That's where we met. We were in the dispensary, not in the pharmacy, so we didn't have any drugs, but we had everything else, and we were right next to the pantry where they stored the foods.
The day the power went off, the generators kicked right back in, so it was only off for maybe a second. Then they came over the PA and told us to just keep doing what we were doing. They had been working on it for a couple weeks, so the thinking was that the situation would last for a couple days.
So the power went off and then just came right back on, so no big deal. But in a few hours, we started getting pull slips for stuff, and the same thing was happening at the pantry.
Carts of blankets, and bandages, and food started disappearing down the hall. That's when it all started to get real. 2 days later, right around that time, 2 or 3 cops were there in the building, and we heard all this shooting. They said a couple guys that got in through one of the back doors and broke into the pharmacy, and the cops just blew them away. No warning, nothing. Just bam, bam, and it was dead right there on the floor. By then, all of the patients who could walk were gone, with most of the doctors and nurses, and we left soon after that too. It was hopeless. So, and we weren't gonna stick around in a war zone, so we just went home.
So what surprised both of us at first was how many people decided to just give up. Kill themselves. I guess that was most of them. We were all so used to living an easy life that we just couldn't deal with nothing, or maybe nothing easy anymore. If we couldn't buy it off a shelf, out of a pump, or have it served, delivered, and installed, and pay for it with a credit card, well then why go on? I mean, and not just a few people, but entire families. Our neighbor loaded the whole family into the car in the garage, and started the motor. They were good people. We did stuff together. But in a way, it made it a lot easier for the rest of us. I mean, this less food means more for us. Less people eating the food. It means just more for us. Oh. At least at the beginning. Now it's harder to find, of course, but it got us over that hump. I still think a lot about the patients left behind at the hospital. I guess we both do.
It wasn't right. What do you do with them? They couldn't walk. They had nowhere to go. One of the doctors said he and a nurse would stay until the end. I think he meant he'd stay until they were either dead or could do it on their own.
He said it was the, how did he put it, the ethical thing to do? He and this nurse rigged an IV with something, and if they wanted to, all they had to do was unclip the tube.
He said he'd continue making the rounds until everyone was gone. What's the difference? They do it, you do it, it's all the same, you're dead anyway. I hope he made it out of there. He was a good person, we liked him.
All we got is each other now, and we've been together for a long time, and we'll stay together until, what the hell, until the end.
Things will get better. Really. Really. Look, if you find some people, some good people out there, tell them where we are. Maybe we'd do better if there were more of us.
I don't like these warehouses. Nowhere to run. And something moved in that doorway. Probably just as scared as me. At least that's what I tell myself.
Have you ever had a dream that repeats itself? My father brought our family to America when I was 12. He worked for an American company in Mumbai. He studied English, advanced rapidly. When he and my mother had saved enough money, they decided to move us here. I don't think there was ever any question in their minds. They talked about it constantly. Their parents were absolutely against it. But my father and mother said they wanted something better for their children. That's why they had to come here. Have you ever been to India? Very few Americans have any idea what it's like. I was very young when we left, but I remember there were a great many people, and great many of those people were very, very poor. For months after our arrival in the United States, I would dream that the poor people had followed us here. In my dream, my father would ask me to answer a knock at the front door. And when I opened the door, there was no one there. And I would turn to my father and say, "Father, there's no one there." And he would say, "Are you sure?" And when I looked back at the open door, the front yard, the street, everywhere there were people. Hundreds, thousands of people, all standing perfectly still and silent, looking at me. my father and mother said, Indians mostly don't like Americans. Didn't like Americans. They said your friends loved the idea of America, the American dream. But they thought Americans themselves were arrogant and greedy and lazy and ignorant and dangerous. I guess we proved them wrong, huh? I studied medicine. My father and mother both said I would be a doctor and provide for them when they grew too old to work. I was such a disappointment to them. I dropped out of medical school after just 1 year. I found the studies too hard. My father said I had been corrupted by my American friends, and my mother cried whenever I saw her. I eventually got a degree in environmental science. I saw this coming 3 or 4 years ago. The signs were everywhere, except maybe for Americans. And some would point to small gains in endangered animal populations as evidence that the planet could heal itself, that the last 50 years was just another obstacle to overcome. But by then, of course, the environment was so interconnected, so fragile, any small thing could bring it all down. And what does it matter if there are a few more spotted owls, if there's no one left alive to see them? Lately, I've been having that dream again. Only this time, when I look back out the front door, there is nobody there.
Saw a bunch of these on front doors around here. This is the place. Gotta be careful. Could be a trap, but I don't think so. Heard a story a week after the collapse that they were having neighborhood suicide parties in the big cities. Bring your kids. Drink the punch. No more worries. Then the idea took hold and it started happening everywhere. Why write notes on the blackboard, though? That seems so hopeful. This guy isn't even trying to hide. At least he's not being quiet. I gotta think that's either brave or stupid, or maybe he just doesn't know.
I have kids out there. I guess they survived. If they did, I pray they're okay. I mean, their mom's a good mom. They live with her up near Chicago, and she's pretty smart. Last time I saw them was about a month before Well, before all this happened. Before this, how many people have you interviewed so far? Do they all start this way? You know, before this happened. Well, before this happened, I knew a guy. We worked at the same mill. And he was some might call him a survivalist. I'd say he's more like a prepper. He seemed prepared. And he was always talking about this. I mean, if he wasn't quoting some scientist or science journal, he was referencing something from the Bible. He was always talking about this. This is coming. If anyone was going to make it, it'd be he and his family. Because he flew in Nam. He flew these scout planes over the treetops, real close, looking for Viet Cong. And about 3 years ago, he bought a float plane. You know, it's the plane that you can land on lakes and rivers. And he modified it. He put 2 big tanks in the back. So all there are just the 4 seats for his family and 2 great big tanks. He said he could fly 2,000 miles nonstop. In fact, he kept warning us. He said, when this happens, you're going to want to get 200 miles away from any road, or they'll find you. You know, the funny thing, about 2 days before this happened, he just didn't show up for work.
They're pretty far off, and obviously they can't see me. A prisoner means only one thing. Unless they mean to use him as a shield or decoy later on. Either way, he ends up dead. Hope it's painless when it comes. I gotta get out of here.
Well, what I remember in the beginning was I was pissed off at everybody. You know, I'd been talking about this shit forever. Nobody paid any attention to me. They said I was nuts. It's like this came as some big damn surprise to everybody. You know? All the damn lights went out. Ran out of food. Then the gangs, murders. Hell, suicides. Suicides were bad. It's like they didn't have a clue a week before this shit started. Did they really think this shit was gonna last forever? Hell, the damn nightly news. Do you really think they were gonna tell you the truth and risk pissing off their advertisers? And how damn dumb you gotta be to buy a politician's bullshit? You think they were gonna go out on a limb? Well, they got exactly what they deserve now. They're all behind their doors. As if they think that's going to keep anybody out. Hell, it didn't keep me out. I found my way in. We're all screwed, you know? You, me, hell, the whole damn planet. You know, I used to think in the beginning there'd be just a few more of us to survive something like this. You know, not a lot of us, but at least a few more. Hell, I don't hear anybody coming through here anymore. Don't get me wrong, I don't go looking. But you know, there used to be at least a couple people wander through here. Now I don't hear anybody. Not even any damn animals. I don't see any animals anywhere. No damn dogs. No rabbits. Hell, the only thing I even hear is the birds. It's just so damn quiet. You know, I try not to talk to myself because they say that's a sign you're going nuts, right? But I just really miss having somebody to talk to. You know, I used to tell my husband. Yeah, I was married when this shit all started. Yeah, I used to tell Rick that he talked too much before, before all this shit started. Back then we used to go up into the attic. We'd sit behind the window and we'd stare out. We just had a pretty good view of the neighborhood from there. Hell, we weren't even doing much talking then. I guess we were just too freaked out, you know what I mean? Shit, I'd give anything to hear his voice now. I'd give anything just to hear anybody's voice anymore, anybody's other than my own. Yeah, I know you didn't ask, but I'll tell you anyway. My husband, Rick, he was a really strong man. Hell, he'd been a cop, for God's sakes. He was supposed to protect me. He was supposed to keep me safe. He used to tell me in the beginning, hey, everything's gonna be okay, honey. Power's gonna come back on and take a little bit to get everything straightened out. It's gonna be just fine. It's all gonna work out. Well, it didn't. I just didn't see it coming. He went out in the damn backyard and he put the gun in his mouth and he pulled the damn trigger. I just don't think any of us have much longer to go. Does anybody say it's any better anywhere else? Can't you just take me with you? Can't you just take me with you? Here, just shut that damn thing off. I'm done.
What happened here? I wonder if they knew each other. Who shot first? Who took the guns? How come the birds haven't eaten the bodies? Maybe one of these guys ran out of gas and the other guy didn't want to give up his car. Makes as much sense as anything, I guess. I wonder why I care.
You sure you're by yourself? I don't see nobody. But I swear to God, if you're lying to us, I will slit your throat. Okay. Let's do this. I don't really know what I'm supposed to tell you. I can tell you I don't like you being here. I guess I do okay for myself. Well, me and him, we've done all right, I guess. When this first started, it was like 12 of us, I guess, I'm sure. It was 12. A couple of years ago, we started this group to prepare for something like this, Ex-military, survivalist guys. We used to get together on the weekends and talk strategy, plan for different scenarios. Sit around drinking beer. Heck, one guy had a nice piece of property out in the country. We'd go out there and have target practice. Get away from the wives. It was like a little club, our own little club. Some people would have called us a militia, but it really wasn't nothing that serious. I mean, yeah, we all had guns and we had some plans, but we didn't have any leadership structure or command structure, nothing like that. Not like a real militia would have. We were really just a bunch of guys who wanted to be prepared. Or at least somewhat prepared for something like this, Mostly we sat around and drank beer.
We wasn't ready for this shit, though.
Nah.
Nobody was ready for this shit. See, some of us had families, and I remember when it started looking like something bad was going to happen, we all started calling each other up and getting our shit together. By the time the power went off, Only 5 of us gathered at this one guy's house. I guess the other guys decided to stay put. I don't know. We never seen them again. Anyhow, we hung out at this guy's house for a couple of days because that was the plan. Check out the situation, let the dust settle.
Right. We had to keep an eye on what was going on up and down the streets, you know? There was always a couple of us on guard duty. Front and back, night and day. We had to take turns sleeping. Because now the shit was real, you know? I don't need to tell you, you know.
So we had to kill some people.
A few.
Not proud of it. Not ashamed of it. Not like it didn't have to be done. Not like we was going to go to jail for it. Twice there's these guys going door to door looking for food. They looked bad. They all had guns. They looked like dudes that wasn't going to take no for an answer. Know what I'm saying?
So we took them out. We took them out. After we shot them, we drug them inside to make sure they were dead. And at night, we put the bodies in the neighbor's basement. That was bad.
We talked about it beforehand, though. Guys come to the door, showing guns. We was going to take them out from the corners of the house. There was just one time we didn't follow the plan. Somebody opened the door on these 2 kids. Could have been no more than 10 or 11. They lit him up, took out little Jim and Johnson in the living room. Me and him was working the corners that day.
So we shot those little bastards. We blew their fucking heads off like we should have done when they first came to the door. Since then, we don't trust or take chances on nobody. We didn't hang around too long after that either.
No, we gathered up everything that we could carry. Been living off the land ever since.
Now, I don't eat so well, so that's what I think about most of the time. I can't get nothing to grow. I used to have a garden out back behind the house. I was pretty good. I grew all kinds of stuff. We had corn and potatoes and some lettuce, and peas, and carrots. Oh, hell, any idiot can grow carrots, and now I can't grow anything. I don't know whether it's the heat or the cold. It's like we have no spring anymore. When it does come, it's so fucking hot that everything just withers within days. And the fall is just the opposite. It goes from 125 in the shade to a hard freeze in just a couple of weeks. Nothing can grow in weather like that. Well, we had good water for a while, until the pump dried up, but it didn't make any difference. Plants won't grow when it's that hot. I heard this guy on the radio saying that if something like this ever came along, that this is everything falling apart kind of thing, that he was going to take off to Colorado and live off the land, deer or antelope or something, I don't know. And the other guy on the radio wanted to know how this idiot was going to get out to Colorado, especially if all the gas was gone and the roads were jammed with other assholes who were thinking the same thing. Well, Einstein had an answer. He said that he was going to get himself a horse, and he was going to ride out to Colorado. I wonder if he made it. I wonder if the mountains of Colorado are filled with people riding on horseback and hunting deer and spending the nights in log cabins under the stars. Sounds good anyway. So this is it then? You've been around. How many others are there? Are there any more like me? Is anyone doing any better? I can't believe it. I mean, it's been, what, a year? I still can't believe it. I had a good job, a nice house, a nice car, and now it's all gone. I haven't had a good meal in over a year. And everybody I know is dead. Or took off. I guess I should go find someplace else, but really, what's the point? You're the first person I've seen in a long time. And the only reason why I came out of hiding when I saw you coming down the road is because you had that camera and not a gun. A few months ago, I saw a couple people coming down the road, and they looked pretty scary. And they had some prisoners with them, you know, people with their hands tied behind their backs. And so, well, they all had guns, and I spotted them before they spotted me, so I just hid up there in the trees outside. And they moved through pretty quickly, and they weren't doing any talking. I thought about this for a long time. Why would anyone have prisoners? Now, I think they were going to eat those people. I suppose a human being would do just about anything if they were hungry enough. I'm pretty far off the beaten path here. That's why I chose this place. I still can't believe that this is how we end. I've already decided that I'm gonna kill myself if it doesn't get any better pretty soon. I mean, I'm gonna die anyway, right? So, what's the difference? Yeah, I got a gun. We kept it in the house for burglars. But I only have a few bullets. None to fend off a gang or anything, but I'd shoot myself if I thought they were going to take me prisoner. I don't want to even think about that shit.
I know these people, and they wouldn't leave the front door open. At least whoever came in didn't ransack it. Smells pretty bad, though. I know what comes next. I can't show much of this. I mean, I see it every day. I could see it every hour if I went in every house. This is so common. I don't have any reaction anymore. This is just the way most families chose to go. At least they went together. But I can't help thinking, oh, what's the use? He was a good kid. So much to live for. I'm gonna guess she's not too dangerous, but I don't know. After what I've heard about cannibals, I can't be too sure.
Okay, this is crazy. So what can I tell you? What would your listeners like to know? Okay. Well, like everybody else, I expected it would get better in a few days. I mean, it was so unreal. The asteroid always misses the Earth. The tsunami always happens somewhere no one ever heard of. This shit doesn't happen. So I expected the news would get better in a couple of days. Everybody did. Everybody in the neighborhood did, at least. What nobody expected was that there would be no news in a couple of days. After the electricity went off, there was no way to find out what was going on. No TV, no internet, no phones. A truck full of National Guard guys came by the second day after, after it started. And they said, just stay indoors for safety. Said we shouldn't risk driving anywhere, and everything would get better in a day or two. But that was really the only contact we had with the outside world. That was the only thing we heard from the outside world. Except for the gunfire. I had a couple of dogs, Derby and Stetson. I really love those guys. Had them both since they were puppies, and when I was home, those two would follow me everywhere. The cat? That was Craig's thing. But the dogs? Those were my babies. And we had the normal supply of pet food. You know, probably a couple weeks worth. You know, a dozen cans of cat food and about a bag of dry for the dogs. And at first we figured that if we had to, we could just put the cat outside and she could find mice or something. I mean, she's a cat, right? They're hunters naturally. Of course, Craig freaked out when I suggested it, but then he said, "What about the dogs?" We couldn't put them outside. You know, let them go. They wouldn't leave the backyard even if we left the gate open. And besides, people were shooting dogs and eating them. In the end, we killed all of them. We had some pills. We were starving, and they were starving, and we couldn't afford to give them any of our food. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, before and after, but I guess it affected Craig a lot more than me. He was always real sensitive that way. He killed himself a few days later. I read somewhere once that they could predict who could survive a plane crash. You know, one where the plane hits the runway and some people get out alive before it all goes up in flames. The survivors were the ones who would almost go into a trance and ignore everything and everyone else and climb over seats, luggage, or other people to get to the exits. I think that's all that's left now. The people who were willing to ignore everyone else and do whatever it took to stay alive. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think luck has anything to do with still being alive at this point.
She looks pissed off. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe not. Hope she's just bored and wants to talk. They all want to talk. Pull up a chair. Let's have a cigarette. And talk.
I absolutely believe this is all God's plan. Everything that happens in the universe is part of God's plan. I even knew you would come. That's part of his plan too, to keep a record of everything that happens. See, humans have become so evil, and God already showed us once before that he wouldn't put up with it. Did anybody really think that gay marriage wouldn't have consequences? Or that God would let the doctors keep on murdering all those babies? Brother Allen told us this would happen. There were plenty of signs. He said God wouldn't let the godless go on turning everyone against him. What did you think 9/11 was all about? Or Hurricane Katrina? Or what about that earthquake that struck Haiti? This was all explained in the Bible. And our government, our godless government, knew this was about to happen. They're behind all of this. It's all in the book of Revelation, chapter 20. Verses 8 and 9. And will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. Verse 10. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone where the beast and the false prophet are. and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Could it be any clearer? This is all part of God's plan, and it has been since Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden. We are witnessing the end. And our government, our satanic government, knew this was going to happen. They're behind this final battle between Gog and Magog, good and evil. This is Armageddon, and it's happening right now. That's why they bought up all the ammo. All the ammunition started disappearing from the store shelves a couple of years ago. They said the Department of Homeland Security was buying it all. Like the Department of Homeland Security had an army. Right. I'm not stupid. All the stupid ones are dead. Satan's government figured if they got rid of all the believers and we didn't have any bullets, we wouldn't be able to fight back. Well, I got bullets, and I got the guns to shoot them too. So when Satan's henchmen come and try to take me, I'll be ready for them. I am prepared to fight for the Lord Jesus Christ with my last breath. But the real question is, and God already knows the answer, but whose side are you on, sister? You go on making your little movie, but you ask everybody, whose side are you on?
That one guy told me to stay away from big buildings. Said they were a trap, but I'll get a good view from this one.
Jesus, where do you get the power for that thing? To charge the batteries. What, you got a solar panel in your backpack there? Yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to steal it. I gave up my electronics a long time ago. Figured I got no use for a smartphone anymore. What the hell am I going to do with your camera? You know, now, if you got food and water in your backpack, that's a different story. Yeah, it's funny. I used to be a technology guy. One of those guys who'd stand in line for hours to get the new droid. I had a big fucking flat screen, 60 inches. You ever see one bigger than that? Yeah, I took it for granted. I took it all for granted. We all took it all for granted. Prisoners of the technology. Guilty as charged. Believed in the science and they made the big fucking flat screen, but not in the science that said we were running out of oil or water. Do you remember the winter before last, before all this stuff hit, when they said it could be all part of climate change? Well, I didn't believe them. Not if it meant I couldn't buy gas for, what, $3.50 a gallon? Yeah, I'm sorry. You said you wanted me to talk about this stuff before all this hit, before that reality destroyed the God of technology. Yeah, I remember where I was when the power went out. Yeah, it's like, where were you on 9/11? I was downtown at my office, and my computer just shut off. You know, our bosses kept telling us to come in, even though they said this was going to be happening for a couple weeks beforehand. But we kept coming in, because I worked at an insurance company. We had a lot of stuff to do. Then the power shut off. Didn't come back on. We just left. And I don't know where you lived. I was 6 or 7 miles away, and getting home took forever. I mean, all the traffic lights were off, obviously, and cops were working the major intersections. But then a train hit a car at a crossing, and it just tied everything up on the east side of town. And by the time I finally got home, one of our neighbors had hooked up a generator. So we all went over to his house and watched the news. And they said we were just the latest place to lose our power. And we had to stock up on water. And that kind of freaked me out. And sure as hell, a couple of days later, we lost our water. Everyone I knew from before is gone. My wife and kids were killed a couple weeks after all this started. We were staying in our basement, keeping all the lights out, trying to make it look like the house was deserted. Then we started running low on canned food. So we decided, my wife and I, that I ought to go scout around, and see what's going on in the neighborhood. Because a lot of folks, right after this hit, they took off like the first couple days. So I got that one day, and I wasn't gone for more than a couple minutes, and I heard the gunshots. And I ran back, and when I found them, they were all dead. Somebody killed my whole family over some soup and a couple of cans of beans.
I never got hungry. Well, not real hungry. Sure, I missed a few meals at the beginning, but then I found the commander. He said he's a preacher, but really, he was just an ex-military guy. We all just called him the commander. Told us what to do. We didn't ask no questions. Told us where to find food and water. We found food and water. Thought he had a direct line with God, something like that. A lot of us thought he was a little nuts, but we didn't care, 'cause he took care of us. Simple as that. There's about 15 of us, I guess. We all worked as a team, and he was the team leader. You didn't like it? There's the door. You know what I mean? Some of the people, they did have a problem with a few of the things we did, but they didn't last very long. The rest of us, we stayed together for about 8 or 9 months, I guess. Because there are so many of us in the group, we could take chances the ordinary guy couldn't. For instance, strangers. Now if you're all by yourself, just you and your buddy, or you and your wife and kids, we can't take no chances with strangers. You hide, and you wait till they go away. Or if you're lucky enough to have a gun, well, you just shoot them. And I know that sounds like shit, but you're still here, so you know what I'm talking about. I bet you did a lot of hiding yourself, 'cause you don't look like the shooting type. Since there are so many of us in the group, we didn't have to worry about strangers shooting us. Although that did happen a couple times. Finding a place to stay was never a problem. Goes back to that safety in numbers thing. If we found an area, you know, a neighborhood that hadn't been completely picked over yet, we'd just find a house and stay there for a while. And one day, we're all out scouting. We come across this old abandoned house that hadn't been broken into yet. So we did just that. And on the inside, up on the cupboard, there's all these peaches. Just like my mom used to make when I was a little boy. You know, homemade stuff. Not that store-bought crap from the supermarket. So I went to another house to grab a few things we might need. Come back 2 hours later, and everybody was dead. Even the commander. Somebody had poisoned those peaches. So now I'm real careful about what I eat. And strangers.
I heard her screams, but what could I do? Probably a house around here somewhere. Maybe they were out of food. Maybe he was just tired of trying to stay alive. Maybe it was just an old-fashioned fight between two people. I guess I'll never know.
Let's see. First, the smell was really bad. I guess when the water went out, the toilets quit working. Where I'm from, I think people just did their business in pails and threw it in the backyard. I suppose some of them, dug holes and buried it. But judging from that smell, I think they just threw it in the yard. It's funny, and you're gonna think this is stupid, but one of the things that I miss most about before is toilet paper. I told you it was stupid. But, you really don't think about wiping your butt with something soft until you just can't do it anymore. I guess someone was thinking about it because right after it happened, I took my dad to the store and there wasn't anything left. And the guy in the store, he said that the toilet paper and napkins and paper towels were like the first things to go. A few weeks later, I saw this body. It was along the side of the road. And there was this sign next to the body that said, "We'll trade toilet paper for food." I guess that didn't go so well. But his butt was clean. I mean, that's gotta be something, right? Yeah. But even worse than the smell of the shit, it was the smell of the dead bodies. You remember that, right? I mean, does everybody say that? But seriously, shit ain't shit when it comes to topping the gag meter. Where's that? The gagometer. I just made that up. You want to use that in your movie? Vicky says shit ain't shit when it comes to topping the gagometer. Whatever. Anyway, I know, you're trying to be serious. You want to pause or something? No, really, do you just want to press pause or stop or something? No. A lot of people were dying from starvation. And there were people like my parents. They just decided to end it themselves. What? Expected me to get all stupid? Want to talk about that? Whatever. Anyway, there were these dead bodies everywhere. I guess the dogs, they took care of that. But then people, they were shooting the dogs to eat them. Some of them were shooting their own dogs to eat them. There really is not as many dogs as you might imagine. And then I guess a lot of the bodies were inside, and I suppose the animals couldn't really get to them. Besides, it took, weeks, maybe more, for a body to decompose to the point where you just don't smell it anymore. Not that it mattered. Really, there's not a lot of us left. Every now and again, I get a whiff. If the wind is just right, I get a whiff, and it's just something you don't forget. And I sit there and I think, how far away? How long ago? Things like that. Anyway, I'm in pretty good shape. I found this farmhouse at the bottom of the hill that's got a working pump. And there's this tree stand. And I can sit up in that tree stand and I can see for miles. Yeah. And then I get, my bow. And every few days I'll shoot a rabbit or a squirrel, for food. And I'm quiet. So that's important. Food and quiet. Because if you're not quiet,
I'm okay for now. Is that what you wanted? Do you really think anybody cares?
Look, bitch. Me and her have been on our own for quite a while now, and we don't want any trouble.
We had enough of that in the beginning. At least I did. My ex warned me to stay away from strangers when all this got
Told my
started.
old lady the same thing. Told her you couldn't trust strangers. Not with what was going on.
On about the 4th day, I walked through the woods to downtown to find out what was happening. And this guy who lived across the street got into my house, raped my kid sister, and then killed her.
Tell her what you told me.
I saw him through the back window, and when he was leaving, I hit him in the head with a shovel. Knocked him out long enough to tie him up good.
Tell him what you did next. Do it.
I took it out, and I cut it off. He screamed, and his wife came out the front door, and I just stood there. Picked it up and threw it at her. She just ran back inside. He bled out in a couple minutes, and I just picked up my shit, and I left. So you seen many strangers? You ever see one like him? Ask him how he got so fat. I dare you.
I ain't fat. You need to shut the fuck up. What? I ain't fat. I eat the same shit she does. We find food in people's houses.
Then how come you're not getting all skinny like me? Go ahead, ask him. I dare you. It's because he eats things. Stuff. I'll starve before I eat that stuff. Whatever. So we met about a week after I took off. I saw him coming out of a house, and I figured he's by himself, and I knew I could outrun him if I had to. So I hid behind a tree. I waited till he went by, and I asked him if he was cool. You know, if it was safe.
Yeah, she did not scare me. She's too small and skinny to scare me. She told me about killing that guy, though. That kind of bothered me at first. But I guess I would have done the same thing. We've done worse since.
Shut up.
Why? Who cares? Nobody's going to see that thing. There's an internet out there anymore.
Look, don't pay any attention to him. You don't need to know everything that we've done. We're not looking to get in trouble for anything. You really ought to leave now. I didn't want to say anything while he was around, but he's scaring me. And he's getting worse. I know he's been eating people. Dead people. And he's been saying things like I would kill someone to eat them if I had to. So you really big out of here, lady. And don't ever come by here again.
From the looks of it, she died of exposure, and not that long ago either. I've never seen anything like this. My guess it's a warning to stay away. If that's what it is, it's effective. I know one thing for sure. I don't want to meet the animal who did this.
My daddy never left the house without at least $100 in his pocket. That's back, of course, when $100 could still buy something, you know? And he'd say to me, son, aside from a gun, cash. Cash is the best insurance a man could hope for. When all this got started, when all this shit started happening, I guess you could say I took out a whole lot of insurance. Had a big old wad of it right here in my pocket. Of course, it wasn't long before money started turning to shit, too. I mean, when the power first went out, everyone started rushing down to the store and trying to stock up on everything that they could lay hands on. You know, stores took the money at first, but when they finally cut the juice all together, all that money became worth nothing. That's when this became the new currency right here. Take a look at this. I got everything you need right here. You got 38 caliber. You got a 38 Saturday night special. Pretty easy to come by. It's one of the few that you can still find around this neck of the woods. 38's right here. 44. Talk about some man-stopping power right there. Now, you probably got a shotgun? You got a shotgun? Come on, everybody's got to have a shotgun nowadays. At least if you're feeding yourself, you do. Got the 12 gauge right here. This right here. Because if you got bullets, people are willing to trade with you. Of course, respect if you got bullets. It's been my experience that folks are just as likely to try to kill you for them, too. You know, my kids, my sons, still pretty young. Lately, I just find myself thinking this is just so unfair. I always figured that if I was lucky, I'd die of old age. Maybe get the cancer and go that way if I wasn't so lucky. You know what I mean? My boys. Not so much. See, I've lived a full life. I've been places. I've seen things. I've been all over this country from one end to the other. Go down to the Gulf at the summertime and go up skiing in Vermont in the winter. They're never going to have that chance. They're never going to get a chance to grow up and get married. Have a couple little boys of their own. I'm sorry. Yeah, I had this all planned out. Said I wasn't going to do this. Julie, my wife, about a week into everything, she was up late one night and saying crazy things about going down to the produce market to pick out some fresh fruit. Next morning while I was out back, she snuck the kids into the pickup truck. drove away. I haven't seen him since.
Doubled back this way after seeing that woman in the tree. Did she get shot? What the hell?
Thank you, God. Thank you. You know how I said this is all part of God's plan? This is part of his plan, too. I knew you would come back. I knew he would send you back. This was an accident. This was an accident. This was an accident. But God sent you back for a reason. I can't feel my legs. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to get my gun. God wouldn't let me go out like this. So I need you to get my gun, please. Please. Come on. Oh, thank you. You can go ahead and get out of here.